Now, tonight's presentation is entitled Thoughts of a Paranormal Investigator, and in this presentation, Kieran will be talking about his theories on what the paranormal could actually be about. From stone tape theories to time slips. If that means nothing to you, then you will learn. He will also be discussing the integrity of investigators and researchers across the paranormal and the conspiracy field. There'll also be some great paranormal footage shown from the aforementioned documentary. So, please give you your usual warm, super welcome to Mr. Kieran Woodhouse. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for all coming. I know you said that I was a northern UK, but I'm as Midlands as you can get, really. But to you guys, I guess it is northern, I guess. I'm a yam from the Black Country, so if you can't understand what I'm saying, just tell me to repeat it slowly. So yeah, I was here 3 years ago or so, a lot has happened since then in the world, and there was a huge part of that time where we couldn't get out and investigate the paranormal, of course. Though as much as I tried, we just couldn't do it. So what I've done tonight is I've amalgamated two presentations really, because there was that period where we were allowed out of our houses for a bit, and I did go out and do some presentations, and I missed you guys with that. So I've tried to put some of that in tonight, as well as some of the new stuff as well. So for the first half, we're really just going to talk about the theory side and what the paranormal could possibly be. And I've got no answers, so if you're all expecting answers, sorry, they're just theories. We just theorise over what the paranormal could be. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, please just throw your hand up and ask, because I know that you hate it. You get a question, it gets to the end and you forgot what you were going to say. So just throw your hand up and I'm happy to answer whatever, whenever. So just a little bit about myself, just to expand on what was just mentioned there. I've been investigating the paranormal now for probably about 10 to 12 years, and as I've kind of carried on this journey, as I mentioned the last time I was here, it all kicked off when I had a really up-close UFO encounter, and that snowballed some synchronicities, and it got to a point where I just couldn't ignore where this thing was pushing me. And I've always been a UFO nut. Like, I ask me anything about UFOs, dates, people, books, I know it all. Strangely, when it comes to the paranormal and ghosts, I don't really watch the mainstream stuff. So when people say, do you know this medium, do you watch this show? And I don't really, I just kind of keep myself to myself where that's concerned. So it's quite strange that this is where I've been pushed. So yeah, UFOs was always my passion, as was conspiracy theories. And when you begin to look at that and you begin to notice the nature of reality is a big thing, I began to think, well, how could the nature of reality fit into the paranormal side of things and the ghost way of looking at it? And of course, it fits in very well. And once you look at that and you acknowledge that there's a possibility that the nature of reality plays a part in the spirit world, as people would call it, it opens up a lot more possibilities as to what we're dealing with, as opposed to being rigid in your thought process and just thinking that ghosts are dead people, which we'll discuss a little later. So, I've already made this mistake about 3 times since I started talking to you, and that's referring to ghosts as the paranormal. But actually, what is the paranormal? So it's easy to forget that the paranormal is everything that's outside of the normal. So even UFOs is, technically paranormal. Bigfoot is paranormal. But we've kind of fallen into the trap where we just refer to ghosts and spirits as paranormal, but it is so much more. So there's anything outside of the socially accepted normal, and as I've just mentioned, UFOs, aliens, cryptids, ghosts, and much more. But are they connected? I genuinely think they are. Before I go any further, has anyone in here been on a ghost investigation? That's pretty good. Normally there's like one person who half puts their hand up. And what do you guys think about it? Do you enjoy going with the big groups? Do you enjoy... Just shout out, yeah?
Yeah, during lockdown
lockdown, I was so bored and lonely, I went out and bought all the professional, hundreds of pounds worth of ghost hunting equipment.
That's
so I
a
would
mistake.
sit there and literally go, hello, somebody talking to me. And my digital recorder today, can I please play you some of the EVPs I've caught
Sure,
from
yeah.
my own house
Yeah.
in lockdown?
Yeah.
I was interested in you saying not a lot happened during, my house used to be a pub.
Okay.
And I've investigated, I'm still cleaning places like Swansea Market,
Right.
the Grand Theatre, they're all back from like 1600s and really interesting places, and I caught some genuine stuff, I feel. I'd love your opinion.
Yeah, I'll give that a listen.
Yeah, lots of stuff.
Someone else put their hand up as well.
No.
Someone else put their... No? Okay, we'll crack on. So, I may have shown... Did anyone come and see me last time I was here?
We actually had, we had a paranormal group in where we are other venue before we came here. They were doing the spirit box and stuff, and Melanie,
Me.
put your hand up, you tell them what happened.
You could hear, we are sitting here and I don't know, I'm here on my own, I don't know anyone, and you could hear, and this thing had been going on for about 45 minutes, I hadn't said a thing, and I'm going, is that you? Is that you? Is that you? I'm looking under the table, I put my hand up and said, was it just me, was someone knocking at the table? And the spirit box said, it wasn't just you. Well, my brother had died 4 days before, and I was like, is that my brother? I said, Ryan's safe. And it was like, he's safe. And I've had 8 pints at this point, I burst into tears. But some of the stuff it was saying back was unbelievable. To the point I hid in the welcome in at the end, going, someone's pulling my leg. Someone's pulling my leg here, and they were going, wow, that was a weird spirit box session, except... And that's what piqued my interest, it did. And that's why I bought it, all the stuff during lockdown.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well, I don't advocate drinking 8 pints before you go ghost hunting. I have 8 pints and I hear all sorts of stuff.
it was pints, not spirits.
Very good. So for those that haven't seen me, I brought this kind of diagram last time that I was here, but this is just a brief explanation of what we're looking at when we view the world and perceive the world. So this is the electromagnetic spectrum, and we have the light spectrum along the bottom, and what we can view we call visible light, and that is the little rainbow colour you can see there at the bottom. So that equates to, they used to think 0.05% of the light spectrum, but recent studies think it's actually a lot less. They now think it's 0.035% of the light spectrum. So that's what we can perceive. So if you think practically 99.65% of this room we can't perceive right now, because it's outside of our perceptive range, it's either side of that rainbow. So what does that mean? That opens up so many possibilities with what we're dealing with here when we talk about the paranormal. Of course, we've now got tools and pieces of equipment that enable us to see outside of that bandwidth, and we have infrared cameras, so thermal imaging cameras that can pick up warm or cold areas. We have ultraviolet torches, which is quite an interesting tool. So ultraviolet torches are quite good, but don't use them in your kitchen when you just told your wife you have cleaned, because it will just show up all the stains, and she'll have you cleaning for hours. But ultraviolet torches are quite good because we've used those, and we've picked up a lot of shadows in a room caught against the backdrop of an ultraviolet torch. And when we've switched to a normal torch, we can no longer see the shadows, and when we switch back to ultraviolet, the shadows are there again. And that's quite interesting, and that tells us that these things are operating within the ultraviolet spectrum, and we wouldn't normally see them with our own eyes. So when you think about this 0.035% of the world that we can see, there must be worlds upon worlds, realms within realms existing around us that we just can't perceive. But as we always say, seeing is believing. How many times do you get the sense that there's something near you or behind you, and then you can't see it, and then you dismiss it because you can't see it? Well, that's wrong. Just because you can't see it doesn't necessarily mean it's not there, and your other senses are picking it up. People often ask, why do you investigate in the dark or at night? And it's not because ghosts only come out at night. It's because in the dark your other senses heighten. So you begin to pick up more on how you feel, even on how you smell. And the smell is quite an important thing in this, because a lot of people dismiss smells when it comes to hauntings, but it can play a part. But you know, we often look in the daylight, we can't see it, so we dismiss it. And we shouldn't. We should always rely on our other senses as well. But you know, we have animals that can see outside of the range that we can see. So we have cats. How often do you have a pet that just sits in the corner of the room and stares off into the distance and then starts growling or, you know, kind of crying and then runs off? We used to have it all the time. We had a dog that would sleep in the kitchen, and regularly it would come out, sit in the doorway, growl for about 10 minutes into the kitchen, and then go back in and go to sleep. But we never knew what it was until one night. And that was the night where there was my brother, myself and my dad, and we were all watching Match of the Day, and it was years ago. West Bromwich Albion were on, so it must have been years ago when they were in the Premier League. And we saw this ball of light come through the curtains. Now, interestingly, it was a ball. It wasn't a flat kind of light that you would get if you shone a torch on the wall. It was a 3D ball, about the size of a football. And it came through the curtains at about 6 foot, dropped to the floor about 2 or 3 inches off the floor, and then proceeded to go into the kitchen, at which point the dog ran out. We're all sat looking at this thing thinking, have we just really seen this? The dog starts growling into the kitchen for about 10 minutes. We can't see anything in the kitchen, and then eventually it goes back to sleep. And we had to wonder then, does that happen every night, and we just happened to have seen it at that point? And that's interesting, because why did we see it that night and not any other night? So again, if you think about that spectrum that we've just been looking at, have you ever had a car radio that's messed up and you listen to 2 songs at the same time? And then it fixes itself and you go back to just listening to your station. So if you're listening to Radio 1, firstly, you've got bad music taste. But secondly, it doesn't mean that Radio 2 doesn't exist. It's still there. But you're just not tuning into it with your radio, or in this instance, your brain. As soon as you change the dial and start tuning into Radio 2, you pick that station up and you no longer pick up Radio 1. It's still there, the waves are still there, you're just not tuning into it anymore. And that instance in your car where it picks up both at the same time and then fixes itself, I think that's what's happening in our brain when we witness a paranormal experience and we see a UFO or we see a ghost or a Bigfoot or whatever. So how many people will say that Bigfoot walked behind the tree but didn't come out the other side? You hear of it all the time. You hear about UFOs just disappearing in front of your eyes, of ghosts just vanishing right in front of you. I don't think they've vanished, and I do think that Bigfoot came out the other side. What's happened is your radio has fixed itself and you can no longer tune into that particular frequency. And psychics and mediums might have the ability to listen to 2 radio stations at once, and that's why they can tune into these different frequencies. And to give another example, if you picture a block of flats, we're all living in this block of flats, but we're all on different levels. So we're living on one level, and we have ghosts above us, we have aliens below us, we have cryptids on the top floor, and you know they're there because you hear them shuffling the furniture around at night. They might play their music too loud, but you can't interact with them. You might catch a glimpse of them in the lift as you're walking down the corridor, but that's it. Ultimately, you're on different levels, and I think that's what's going on here. And when we think about our bodies and how we are essentially trapped within a 5-sense reality, as you could see via that spectrum just, what's stopping us from being able to flip between all these frequency ranges? Ultimately, it's our body. And once our consciousness, once this biological vessel dies, our consciousness is free to travel all of the frequencies, but we'll get a little bit into that as we go on. So theories on ghosts and spirits. So I'm just going to talk about a couple. I've got some really good examples of some time slip theories, and then we'll kind of just delve further and further into it as we go. So stone tape theory, is anyone aware of what that is? Yeah, okay. So stone tape theory. So Henry H. Price, who was a Welsh philosopher, who also wrote about parapsychology, he had a theory he referred to as the psychic ether. He believed that there was a realm where all thoughts and memories were stored. This realm could be seen by those such as psychics, where they had access to the memories and could relay them back to the living world. So stone tape theory is essentially what it says. It's a tape recording, and you know when you might see or hear about a ghost experience where the thing has walked through the wall, or it's kind of going about its daily business and doesn't pay any attention to you while you're observing it. People say that that's the stone tape theory in play, and that's essentially this ghost just going about their daily business. Now, if you lived in a house for 40, 50 years, and you would wake up in the morning, you'd go downstairs, you'd make your coffee, you'd go upstairs, you'd get ready, and then you'd go to work. Doing that for 40, 50 years is going to imprint some kind of memory on the fabric of the building, so this theory goes. You might walk into a room and get an instant, oh, I don't like this room, and then you find out that there was a murder in there or something, and that's the emotions in that room imprinting themselves on the fabric of the building, or on the fabric of the earth. And what happens then is those feelings and those emotions play back, and people can observe them through seeing and experiencing what was happening at the time. Other researchers then began to expand on this, and some began to theorise that the memories were actually stored in fields of energy that were sometimes seen by the living in what we understand as a paranormal experience. Researchers in modern times see the stone tape theory, also known as a residual haunting, because it lives there, it's just going over and over again, as activity that seems to repeat itself over and over as if on a loop. If the entity ignores its surroundings and the people observing the activity, it's deemed to be because they're simply a recording, a tape that is being rewound and played time and time again. So it's interesting there that we see these kind of thoughts being, thought about back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but it's almost how they look at it. They talk about memories being stored within fields of energy, like the modern iCloud, or we store our documents. They thought that memories were stored up in this field of energy, and this is fascinating because when I came across this kind of stuff, I was already halfway down my kind of research road, and to see people thinking along the same lines as myself was quite good to see and quite interesting. So that's essentially a stone tape theory. Have you got any questions or thoughts on stone tape theories? Has anyone ever witnessed what they might believe to be a stone tape theory?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What happened?
Well, I went to a family dinner up in the Midlands, up in sort of Cheshire area. Stepped out of the car, and I was in a very 1600s version of the street I was in. I literally just got out of the car, from my dad's car, stepped out, and suddenly I was just in the 1600s, watching Civil War soldiers returning to the fort, and I felt immediately sick, drained, scared. I felt all their sorrow, all their pain, everything just washed straight through me. The smell of the horse poo on the floor, the blood coming off these people as they literally were walking through me.
Yeah.
I was just stood in the middle of them. I couldn't go left or right because there were just too many people. The pavement wasn't there. It was just road to building. That was it. Everything around me was ancient, old buildings. And they were just coming straight at me, and I just couldn't go anywhere. Couldn't go left, couldn't go right. And I dropped to my knees by this point. My mum and dad rushed around the car to find out what had happened to me.
So they weren't seeing you?
Because I was on the floor, and I was just nearly vomiting on the floor, looking up at these people, and shock and horror on their face. They're tired, exhausted, blood, like I said, people with limbs missing and just bad bandaging and stuff. And it lasted. They sort of pulled me up onto my feet, and were trying to shake me to say, "What's the matter?" I said, "What's the matter?" It must have lasted about 5 minutes.
Wow.
And I just snapped straight out of it. And I was back in the street again. All the feelings were washed away. I was back to normal. I felt great. And we went in for dinner in the pub.
That sounds more like a time slip,
Well,
which we'll discuss next.
it was the fact that I just put my feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And as soon as I touched the floor, I just felt the energy of the whole place just change.
Yeah.
Oof. It was just straight through my body like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, sounds like a normal night out in Cheshire, to be fair, but
Yeah.
So time slips. So I think what you've just described there is a perfect example of a time slip, to be honest. And I've got a couple of examples, and you might see the correlation there. So many people have purported to have time travelled, albeit briefly, and encountered times gone by. Some encounters are brief, with the experiencer encountering 1 or 2 people who seem to be dressed in period clothing, just going about their day. Other encounters have seen an entire street transport back in time, with the vehicles on the roads being replaced with horses and carts, the shops changing and the people and fashion changing too, which is quite similar to what you heard. Britain has many reported time slips, but the most common is Bold Street in Liverpool. So more time slips are encountered there than anywhere else in Britain. Now there's an interesting thing about time slips, because it never seems to happen forwards. We never seem to have a time slip into the future. And I do wonder why that could be. You're going to tell me you have? Great. Was it like the Jetsons? Okay.
This man said to me, do you want to see the year 3000? And I said, well, yeah, of course I do. And he took me to the year 3000. And it was beautiful. There was no people there. And that humanity had confined themselves into tiny spaces where they lived their entire life. And with very little food, with very little no interaction with each other, and it was like a form of factual reality, because their heads were connected together. So they were connected, not physically, but mentally, and they lived their lives in a tiny area, but connected mentally. It was very bizarre.
Sounds like the Agenda 2030 that the UN want to put us all into these little smart cities and confine us a little bit.
21 years ago that happened.
Well, that probably is the future, to be honest. Yes.
When I had a premonition dream, I guess several one particular sticks with me, and that's regarding my daughter. Just to sort of give you a very quick, because this is what we were talking about now, I wrote a book a while ago. I've been intuitive since I was 7, and I started to have seizures about 12 years ago, and I saw a lady from England was a clinical psychologist, Nico, and I had an intuitive experience with her. So when I had the report done, she recognised that I had an intuitive gift then, or she described it as highly intuitive. So it works in different ways, but so dreams I found can be, premonition. And I actually spoke to somebody called Julian Mossbridge, who's written best-selling books about 2 months ago. Because she, even though she is a neuro scientist
in California,
she acknowledges intuition. But she describes premonition as time travel.
so a kind of time travel.
Time travel.
Okay.
Premonition dreams, they look at it as a kind of time travel.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because ultimately, I'll get onto it, but time isn't linear. So everything that's ever happened, is happening and will happen, is all happening now. So we've already done this a million times, and we've already done tomorrow a million times. And one of the reasons I believe that we don't get many future time slips is because people are often stuck in the linear time. And what they tend to do is they only know what they've experienced. They aren't aware of what they're going to experience. So when they have time slips, as I'll get onto a little bit later about how I think the paranormal comes about, when they're manufacturing their own time slip, they can only go by what they know. So therefore, the only thing they can imprint on their time slip is the past, because that's all they know. They've not been to the future yet. And that's the majority of people.
I've seen something that is forward rather than backward, and it was to do with a stone. And
stone?
It was a big, massive stone in Singleton Park. We were there a month previous to seeing this, and I recognised it straight away. It had moved. So I went over and looked and thought, well, has it been moved by somebody? So I had to look at the ground, where it had been moved from. Nothing, it wasn't disturbed. And I swear to you, that stone had moved. And it was surrounded by other stones. So it looked as though it was some kind of like ritual place.
Yeah.
Where it had actually been placed from one section to another. And I said at the time to friends, that's moved. But also the motorways. I've noticed when I'm going down the motorway, it changes in scene. It's like as if everything's moved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that
Yeah.
also. But that particular stone threw me,
Okay.
and I couldn't
Interesting.
explain it.
I think like deja vu could play a part into this as well, where you've kind of already experienced what you're having at the time.
Well, I always think that, is it what we're seeing or what you're explaining, or are there multiple versions of ourselves on different timelines, and we have an experience with ourselves?
So interestingly, I as mentioned, I do a podcast, and I interviewed a guy once, and he went to bed about 9 o'clock on the evening to read his book, and he heard a clamour going on in his bathroom. So he thought, thinking there's a burglar or something, so he gets out of bed, creeps to the bathroom, just pushes the door slightly ajar, and realises that it's himself cleaning his teeth. And he can see himself cleaning his teeth in his own house.
That must be
And
freaking
that was his experience. So again, what's happened there is two timelines have merged, and he's seeing himself. But whether I couldn't quite get out of him whether because cleaning your teeth is cleaning your teeth. So I don't know if he could tell whether it was a past or a future experience. So there's an example here of a time slip on Bold Street. So the tale goes that 19-year-old Sean had been shoplifting in the area. Now there's no correlation between Liverpool and shoplifting. It just so happens that that's what's going on here. A security guard noticed him and he approached Sean. Sean then ran down the alleyway in an attempt to shake off the guard, but he found it was a dead end. Turning around, he expected to see the guard stood right behind him, but the security guard was nowhere to be seen. So he walked back out into the street and realised that the road had changed entirely from the mere minutes previous where he was running down it. People were dressed strangely, cars looked peculiarly outdated, and the roadworks which Sean had just seen moments earlier were gone. He attempted to use his phone, only to learn there was no service. The young man was by now wholly bewildered as to what was happening, and he tried to piece it all together. He stumbled to a kiosk where he saw the date on the newspaper was 18th of May 1967. So he travelled back decades. Somehow he'd gone back 39 years. In a complete panic, he began to run, but as he did, he could just make out that the streets of his hometown were now beginning to form some kind of semblance, and he stopped and looked around at the now modern-day street. Yet when he'd run, all the old-fashioned street was there, and now they'd gone. So he jumped on a bus and made a quick escape home. Now, can we trust a shoplifter story? It sounds like the best excuse ever, to get out of being caught shoplifting. But interestingly, the guard mentioned that when he was chasing Sean down into that dead-end alley, he visibly witnessed Sean vanish into thin air. And then, of course, as Sean turned around, so did the security guard. He's told his story many times, and he's remained consistent, and the security guard has validated it as well. So it's quite an interesting story there. Does anyone used to watch a programme called Good Night Sweetheart? With Nicholas Lyndhurst? It sounds quite similar to that. But it brings in the question of when you're witnessing a ghost experience and they vanish, are we not just having a time slip? So there's a blurred line now between just looking at a ghost and having a time slip. Could it be the same thing? I'll try and read, it kind of cuts off a little bit, but I'll try and read it as best I can. So this is the second example. So 10 years previous to that experience, Frank and Carol, a couple, were out for a day shopping in Liverpool. They decided that Carol wanted to go into a bookshop. They were held up though when Frank popped into an old friend and the pair got chatting. Carol went on ahead. She went to the bookstore by herself. Finally, Frank said bye to his friend and decided to travel to Bold Street to try and find his wife. He was surprised to see that the bookshop had now changed its name to Cripps, with the new name displayed above the door. It soon became clear that the store was no longer a bookshop, but a women's boutique. with clothing and handbags adorning the window. Before he went in, he heard a van passing, whose signage said Cardins on the side. The van gave out an old-fashioned beep from its horn as it proceeded up the road. Upon looking closer, Frank soon noticed that all the cars that were going past him looked like they were from the 1950s. He was beginning to feel on edge when a woman in modern clothing also approached the front of the shop. She looked at Frank, a bit confused. She looked at the shop front, a bit confused. But they both entered Cripps together. But once they got in, it was now back to being a bookshop again, with not a lady's handbag in sight. The woman appeared puzzled, remarking to Frank that she thought it was some kind of new women's store, before turning round and leaving the shop. It should be noted that Frank is a retired police officer, not a man to give rise to tales of the paranormal, but there seems to be very little explanation for this. It also turns out that Cripps was a store on that same spot in Bowl Street many years previously, and similarly, the name that was on the side of the van was a thriving business in Liverpool at one time, yet the company had long gone by 1996. So this is an interesting experience because he also has someone else completely unrelated to him experiencing it as well. So to both kind of be sharing this experience of a time slip is strange. So as I've just said, where does the line kind of blur between a ghost experience and a time slip? Because we often would think a time slip would be like you had, where the whole scenery has changed and you're kind of almost stood in a movie scene with everything going on around you. Yet we think a ghost experience would just be watching one soldier walk up the road. But what's the difference? There could just be different variations of time slips. Any thoughts on time slips? Any comments? Yeah.
It could be a perception because when my father passed away, I would walk down from his house to my house, and I saw it differently because I was different before. I was going to a lot when he passed, and then after it, I just saw like the same way, but it was different. Everything was different. So it's like the frequency you're on, and it's what you see at the time. Although I used to dream, like I dreamt that Legionnaires' disease was going on, going down as a kid. Years later, I didn't know what it was Legionnaires' disease.
Yeah.
Like things that happen, but I think it's definitely what we tuned into.
Yeah.
It's like the frequency I was before was different to what I saw when I wasn't.
Yeah.
But I'm walking on the same street.
Yeah.
It seems different.
I think you're right. So how many times do we feel, you'll listen to a particular song and all of a sudden it makes you happy, or you listen to a song and it makes you sad? So music is frequency. Well, everything is frequency. Everything is vibration. And I think what we do is we tune into these frequencies, and which I'll get onto a little bit later, but what we put out is what we get back. If I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be a miserable bastard, the day is going to be awful, because I've chosen to perceive the day from a miserable perspective. If I get up tomorrow and think, the rain's not going to bother me, my 3-year-old screaming in my face isn't going to bother me, and I'm just going to get on with my day, everything's going to be great, and the slightest inconvenience won't bother me. Whereas in the other perception, the slightest inconvenience can become the worst thing. So everything in life is a matter of perception. And I think that is changed by frequencies. Now, people often say to me, slightly off topic, but crystals, how can crystals possibly work? Well, I think crystals can work because of frequencies. So they're obviously emitting a particular frequency. And if you are tuning into that frequency, you might feel particularly drawn to that particular crystal. And I think that's what happens with music and everything that happens. And interestingly, they changed the frequency of music 30, 40 years ago. And it's no longer the same frequency that it was back in the 50s and 60s. And people think that they've done that, it's been done on purpose.
There's a video, isn't it? Kindergarten Cop. That's how I remember it.
Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. But they don't say it's kindergarten cop now, and you can't find that word anywhere. It's kindergarten, which is obviously German.
So you're talking about the Mandela effect now?
But I've got a video of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a friend who had the DVD of Interview with a Vampire, and then it's now Interview with the Vampire, and he was like, no, I've got the DVD. It's Interview with a Vampire, and then he showed me the DVD, and it was Interview with the Vampire. I was like, well, you're wrong, but.
So is this somebody manipulated now?
I don't know. That's a completely different presentation. I might have to come back for that one, Emily. Okay, so what if we're actually creating our own paranormal experiences. What if what we see and what we perceive and what we get back is all up here in our minds? So this is where we're going to go a little bit down the route of consciousness and the holographic universe and things like that. I just want you to bear in mind that this is a theory. I believe that stone tape theory exists. I believe they could potentially all exist side by side. But we're just theorising here. We're just hear me out. And like I say, this is really the first time I've spoke about this in public. So the more I've investigated the paranormal, the more I've begun to realise that people are in certain positions in their life whenever they're having these experiences, as you've just pointed out yourself. And I think what's happening is they're putting out subconsciously and they're getting back physically. Now, if you think about the Virgin Mary, she only ever appears to people who believe in the Virgin Mary. I've never seen her, but she only ever appears to those that believe in her. Same with Bigfoot. If you want to go and hunt Bigfoot, you'll find Bigfoot. If you want to go and see a ghost, you'll see a ghost. Whether you actually have or not, you'll believe that you have experienced a ghost encounter. So what I think is happening is people are manifesting their own... Well, I already believe that we're manifesting our own reality. We are creating our own reality. The universe exists in here. That can go into a whole other conversation, but we'll just try and keep it light. Now, if you're manifesting your own reality, it stands to say that we're manifesting our own paranormal experiences within that reality. Now, the house that I investigated in Essex that we made this documentary for, every time they have something going on negative, the haunting kicks off again. Now, we'll get into a bit later because I've got some evidence from that house, but just to put it into perspective, at the time I started to investigate their house, they had 2 8-year-old autistic twins. They had 2 teenage girls going through puberty and all that kind of thing. They had arguments regularly between mum and dad. It wasn't a nice environment to be in, and that was the height of the haunting. They then had, the one daughter had a baby, and the haunting stopped for about 6 months. Why? Well, I think it's because they were focused on this bundle of joy that's just come into the world, and they weren't fighting, they weren't arguing. All of a sudden, the parents of that baby have a very nasty split. The other teenage daughter's dad kills himself, and we're back into negativity, and lo and behold, the haunting starts again. And there's really a lot to be said when you look into paranormal experiences and haunted houses and things like that. How often do they contain people that are going through a really tough time or a really good time? It's these elations of emotions that are causing these paranormal experiences. You look at the Enfield haunting, one of the most famous hauntings that happened in Britain, and that contained 2 girls that were kind of going through that change in life as they were approaching the teenage years. Was it the hormones? Was it that kind of thing that was creating this energy? Or was the Enfield haunting a load of rubbish? I don't know. So just to kind of put this into a diagram. So collective consciousness. So this is my take on what we spoke of earlier, where Henry Price was talking about the energy being stored in a cloud, so to speak. So collective consciousness is all of us. So I am all of you, and all of you are me, and we are everything there ever is, and was, and will be. And that's our consciousness. Unfortunately, it's currently contained and imprisoned in this 5-sense reality, in this biological vessel. Once the biological vessel dies, our consciousness will rejoin the collective consciousness. That is the universe, ultimately. Now, that collective consciousness is everything. It is you, it is me, it is that table, if you wanted to really break it down. If you ever watched Avatar, it's kind of like that, where everything is connected. It's very similar. So what happens is we absorb from the collective consciousness our subconscious wants and needs. Your mum has just died and you really want to see her again. We have people come on ghost hunts. In fact, a close friend of mine, his wife's brother hung himself. She'd never shown any interest in the paranormal. All of a sudden she's wanting to come on all the investigations with us. It's obvious why. So she thinks that a tunnel 40 miles away from their house, she's going to find her brother there. And you know what? She did. And when we went 60 miles away to an abandoned mill, she found her brother. She always found her brother wherever we went. Nobody else had that experience, but who's to say that she's wrong? Who's to say that she's lying? She always found her brother. So we absorb our wants and needs from the collective consciousness. We have that paranormal experience, so we see our dead brother, or our mum, or our dog, and then we then tune back into the collective consciousness, and that's what enables us to have this paranormal experience. Now, people might say, well, if that's the case, how can I see my mum at the bottom of my bed and she talks to me and she knows everything about me? You know, you hear about these experiences where they've had full-blown conversations with a dead relative long after they've died. And you think, well, how did that person know who I was if it's just energy, if it's just a form of energy that I'm tuning into? Well, that's simple, because that form of energy, that frequency that you're tuning into is consciousness, so it was your mum. It was also my mum. It was also everybody else's mum. So it knows everything about you. It knows everything about your mum. But at the same time, you're putting that picture onto that energy. So you're tuning that energy and you're manifesting it in so it looks like your mum. Otherwise, it's just a point of attention. Now, everything that we look at in the universe is a point of attention. So we can all see this screen because that's a bunch of atoms emitting a frequency, and our brain is using our eyes to tune into that frequency, and we're decoding it so that we can now see that screen. Just like if you go home and log onto Facebook, I go home and log onto Facebook, 130 miles apart, we're both looking at the same screen. How are we doing that? Well, we're tuning into the same frequency, and we do that with our mind. Now, people will say they'll see a colour differently. They can't see green, they might see it as red, or they might see it as grey. So who's right or who's wrong if you can't see a particular colour correctly? In my universe, it's red. In your universe, it might be grey. But that's how you're perceiving that point of attention. And that's what happens when we have these experiences. We're manifesting our own experiences. If you want to find Bigfoot, you will. Now, I genuinely believe that the Bigfoot experiences, the UFO experiences, the ghost experiences, they're all the same. At the bottom level, they're all the same. They're all just points of frequency, points of energy that we're tuning into and manifesting our own beliefs onto, and we get back what we want from those beliefs, or that energy that we're putting out there if you're thinking about that negative aspect. Are there any questions about that before we have a break?
Yeah, I got one. I always believe, and I do believe, that it's about the need and it's about the comfort. And if we are engaging on energy and a collective consciousness, if you went abroad and you were coming home, I'd come and meet you at the airport. So therefore, if somebody is missing a loved one, and that loved one is able to perceive that hurt, that pain, which is personal, I don't believe that they're actually manifesting it from their mind, because that would be mental illness. It's got to be that they're connected in some way in order to stop the hurt, to stop the pain, and to bring the comfort.
That's your own subconscious mind. So you've watched a film where gets to the end of the film and you realise they're actually living in a mental asylum, and the whole film has been them making up a story in their mind to, I don't know, to get over the guilt of what they've done or something. I think that's what's happening. So you really want to see this, like, so Anna really wanted to see her dead brother, and she saw him every time she came with us. Every time. I don't think that's her brother thinking Anna needs to see me, so I'm going to go and see her. I think that's her really wanting. It's the other way around, because don't forget, for me, we create our own reality. So she's making Matt appear in front of her to see her, to comfort her.
That's your perception. That's
Yeah.
your thought. But that's not everybody's thought. No,
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's all a theory.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So I'm a medium, so I work and give communication to people who've lost loved ones. And people always come, and they always want to hear from loved ones, friends, and people they've lost. And I will always say that, I'm a vessel. It's not guaranteed that person is going to come through. So even though people come wanting validation, wanting proof, they don't get it all the time.
Yeah.
It only comes from, and when I give evidence, it's not coming from myself, it comes from another source. And then I give information to people that I've never met before, never met their family, that only relates to them.
Yeah. So I would say that you're tuning into that collective consciousness and pulling out what they want. And you're that person that can listen to 2 radio stations at the same time. And can. So when we think about what a ghost is, just really quickly before the break, people always think that another theory of what a ghost is it's a dead person. So we always have this is the biggest, widest held belief within the world, that a ghost is a dead person. So why would a ghost or a dead person choose to haunt a tunnel in a field in the middle of nowhere? You know, there's a ghost in that tunnel. Why is he just choosing to stay in that tunnel, not near anybody?
Yeah, but that's residual energy.
It could be residual. It could be residual energy. But if we accept that we're just consciousness that can that's everything, why would he just choose to be there? So you know, people go on spirit boards, Ouija boards, and it doesn't matter. They'll talk to a monk from the 10th century, and the monk's talking in English. You think, well, how? The monk would be talking in Latin or French or something like that. Or, you know, it's a 4-year-old who can spell its name perfectly from the 1600s. There were grown men that couldn't spell the name in the 1600s. So how is it doing it? So you can either accept that, well, it's a load of rubbish and they're not talking to a monk from the 16th century, or if it's collective consciousness, it can talk however it wants to. It knows how to talk the modern language. But then why would it perceive itself to be a monk from the 1600s?
Well, if we believe in the spirit world, they all learn over there as we do whilst here.
Possibly, yeah.
So we're all educating ourselves, no matter what.
Possibly. It's all possible.
I can give you a string. I've had loads of experiences through my life, continuous from as long as I can remember. But as regards spirit board, I used to do it by myself as a child. I didn't even know what it was, but I made it for myself. I thought I was talking to somebody, I thought it was my friend. I was only a child at this time. I'm 9, 10 maybe. And it manifested went over a period of time. This person would let me leave and wanted to talk to me all the time. Then things started happening to me. I had glasses thrown at me and different things. So my mum didn't understand. Took me to see these 2 very old ladies in Porthcawl, who said, I didn't even say the person's name instead, said the name of the person as soon as I walked through the door, and that I had brought them out on the spirit board. So it's, you know, how would they know that? They never met me before, and I had, from doing that naively by myself, because I didn't know what I was dealing with as a child, I brought that up for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and the more I do these talks, the more I hear different people's ideas and different people's experiences.
I know it's real because it happened to me.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I've got a lot of experiences on spirit boards I could talk about, just don't have the time. Why not?
Only purely because of my experiences that a lot of people will use them, but they don't understand. The same as here as living, there's good, there's not so good, and it's the same in all dimensions. There's good, there's not so good, and if you don't know what you're doing properly, you can manifest and bring things into your life that can affect you.
Well, could you not do that without a spirit board? I mean, the spirit board's
you could, but again, because I've experienced things myself, so I know things can happen from doing these things.
Yeah.
And I think people are vulnerable, and they watch horror films, and they think it's all great, let's all do this is all a bit of fun, but it's not, because these things can happen from doing things
of
like
course.
that.
Yeah, we'll talk. So as mentioned, we'll be touching in the second half about the validity of certain mainstream investigators and TV shows and things like that, and then we'll be looking at some evidence as well. So we're all, I assume here, into UFOs predominantly. Now, the split in the UFO field is massive, isn't it? And there's always been that kind of divide and politics and arguments, and a lot of people believe that they're interdimensional, a lot of people believe that they're nuts and bolts craft, physical craft from physical planets, and some people believe it could be both. And that divides people. And unfortunately, as we are, as a human race, we can't accept other people's points of view, we can't accept that what they're saying is a possibility, and therefore we must defend what we're saying, and we stake our claim and we fight to the death to defend our own theory. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about that. So, trigger warning. So, this day and age, people often get triggered by the most sensitive things, so I have to put that up as a disclaimer. So, you might all have your favourite conspiracy theorist, podcast host, or you might have your favourite ufologist or paranormal researcher or something. But do you ever stop to think about what they talk about? Why do they talk about it? How do they talk about it? And do you ever stop to think that what they're saying might not be right? And, you know, I'm open to anybody, people pointing out their own theories and experiences to me and take it on board all the time. I don't dismiss anything. Now, when you look at these kind of people that, you know, and I'm talking about your big guys, and I'm not going to name names because we all know who some of these people are across all of the fields. These are like just what I call the circuit men, the people that do the big circuits. They go and do the big conferences, the big talks, the TV shows, the talking heads on the shows and things like that. Now, they will all put across their own theories. They will all put across their own evidence and their own thoughts on whatever field they're investigating at the time, be that UFOs or the paranormal or whatever. Now, it's important to remember that there are problems with theories, and theories, they're not set in stone. So a lot of theories are people's beliefs, that people's experiences that are shaping them to see and perceive in that way. I was talking to someone during the break actually that essentially life is just one big perception, and depending on how you've lived your life, you will have a different perception to the person next to you. And that doesn't mean that that person's wrong, it just means that they've had a different experience. You know, we're all here playing the game of life, and we all have different experiences, and that is what shapes our perception. And we always need to keep that in mind when we're thinking about theories and why certain people hold certain beliefs. But a theory isn't set in stone, so the evidence should always guide the theory and not the other way around. So how often do we see people who will have a theory and they will defend it to the death? And you know, I've seen it myself in the paranormal world where fellow investigators have caught evidence that might just not really fit the agenda that they're trying to push, so they dismiss the evidence. And I think if that was similar evidence that was promoting their own theory, they would have been all over it. It would have been shown to the world, but they dismiss it, they delete it, they hide it, because it doesn't push their own beliefs, it doesn't reinforce their own beliefs. And this happens to all of us. It happens not just in this world. People watch the news and things like that. You know, we like to put ourselves in echo chambers. We like to live in echo chambers where we're surrounded by people that are reinforcing our own beliefs, that are telling us that what we believe is right. And we don't want to hear any contradicting views because that challenges our belief system, and we don't like that as a species. We don't like it at all. So quite often, throughout this kind of 10-12 years that I've been doing this, I started off as all ghosts of dead people, and then I've just, through my experiences, I've slowly began to theorise and think, well, what else could it be? What's that experience telling me? What's this experience telling me? And it's shaped my perception. Your experiences will shape your perception. Your experiences and your experiences will shape your perception. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, they're just your perception. A lot of researchers and investigators will be so adamant of their theory that they will cherry-pick evidence to back it up, whilst ignoring evidence that discredits it. That's what I've just said. It happens all the time, more than you'd probably believe. I can see Mike nodding his head. He's obviously had experience of that. I had a guy who he was a complete and utter skeptic. Did not believe in the paranormal. Didn't believe in UFOs. He was just a very black and white man. And I managed to get him onto a ghost hunter once, and we went to a place called the Electric Club in Wolverhampton, and it's basically just like this. It's a social club, but it had a really cool cellar, and the cellar was quite active for experiences. And he went down there and he took a few snaps, took a few photos, and he caught, in my mind, three bodies. They looked like children sitting on the back wall. You could see their legs kind of bending over the wall. Two of the bodies were kind of, you could only make out half of the bodies, and one body was really prevalent. He's never shown that photo to anybody. I saw it because he took it on the night. I've asked for it to be able to, I would credit him to showing these kind of things that I do. but he just will not share it and still doesn't believe in ghosts. And that's fine. That's his perception. But really, he has a theory, and his theory is that ghosts don't exist, and he's willing to dismiss anything that proves otherwise, because it will rock his belief system, and he's not willing to accept that. Now, interestingly, just a cool story about that cellar. So we're quite deep down. There's no phone signal at all, but we always put our phones on what we call flight mode or airplane mode anyway, so you don't get phone calls. So we're down in the cellar, and there's a lady with us, and her phone starts to ring. It's about 1:30, 2:45 in the morning, and her phone starts to ring, and we think. So the first thing I said was, "You should have that on flight mode," and she said, "It is." And then, well, actually, we don't get signal down here as well, so it really doubly shouldn't be ringing. And so it rang and rang and rang, and she answered the phone, and nothing. So she hung up, showed us all that it was on flight mode, and put the phone back in her pocket. About a minute later, it started to ring again. So she takes it out of the pocket, unknown number. So she answers it again. Now, at this point, the phone automatically goes onto loudspeaker, which I don't know, for you guys, I've never had that. You always have to push a button to put it onto loudspeaker. It automatically comes onto loudspeaker with what sounded like, for me, a little boy, other people said a little girl, in a really broad black country accent, saying, "I really want to go home now." A little child saying, "I really want to go home now." And then hung up. It just went to white noise. So we're like, there's about 10 of us in this cellar, and we're all thinking, what's just happened? And we did some research on this place, and it's in a place called Chapel Ash, which is an area in Wolverhampton. And the stone's throw away from the club is a big brooding church. And supposedly that's where they buried a lot of the bodies during the plague, are all buried underground. And underneath the Electric Club were mass graves of families and children, which would also explain the picture that guy caught sitting on the back wall as well, of these 3 children, which we didn't know until we did this research, and then it all made sense. I try not to do research till after we've visited a place, so it doesn't kind of get in my mind and make me see things that I wouldn't normally see just because I can see it. So some people actually go as far as doing their best to discredit other researchers' work and theories. So this is going the extra mile now. So you might have all come across these kind of people, maybe. I don't know, a show of hands if you've come across a researcher that does his best to discredit. Yeah. So not only are they, really holding on to their own beliefs at the, kind of discrediting stuff that doesn't fit their own beliefs. That's bad enough, but what makes it worse is these people will then go the extra mile and start to discredit other people's beliefs and evidence, physical, solid, good evidence, because it doesn't fit with their narrative. Why? And this is a question. Why are people, and I'm talking about these career men that I spoke about, these kind of circuit men, why are they so desperate to hold on to their own beliefs and their own theories? Any ideas?
It's a fear.
A fear of?
Well, they're indoctrinated, aren't they? It's a social engineering program, isn't it, that we're all in?
Yep, that's a point. Anyone else? Any other?
Their own egos.
Their own egos, yeah, absolutely, yeah, that's a valid point. I've used the word relevance. Now these people, they get paid a lot of money. They're talking heads on ghost programs, ancient aliens, all these kind of programs. They appear on all these documentaries, they sell their books, they go and do big talks, and I mean talking to thousands of people at a time. It's a career. They make a career out of this. And they've staked their claim, they've stuck their flag on a mound and they're defending it to the death. Why? Well, mainly because of relevance. If someone else's theory is proven true over theirs, they're no longer relevant. They're not wanted at the shows, they're not wanted on the TV, they're not wanted, their books aren't being brought because there's a new kid on the block. And they can't have that happen. They have to keep them at an arm's length. So, I put at the top, it's a bit confusing, but everyone's an expert and everyone else knows nothing. And this is how some of these people come across. I know everything, and as I said at the start, I have no answers. But these people, they talk, they write, they present, like that is the be-all and end-all. You know, I've been to people talking about the paranormal, and they will tell me, no, this is what a ghost is. And I'm thinking, well, you know, until you've died and and been one, like, how do you know? How do you know what it is? It's all theories. And so they know everything, and everyone else knows nothing. That's how they appear. So it's relevance, it's popularity, fame, money, and insecurity and egos. And that's really what these people are doing. Now, there are people, there's a guy who used to work for the MOD, I won't say his name, and I've seen this guy on programmes that are taking the piss out of UFOs. And he appears on that programme taking the piss out of UFOs, because they're paying him a bit of money. And then I've seen him on a programme the next week where he's telling you about how he used to investigate UFOs and they're real. And you think, well, it's just whoever's paying his money. He will just go with whoever's paying his money. And that's what happens with these people. And you'll have other people who will just defend their theory, and they're the reasons why they do it. And I guess the point I'm making here is just be careful about who you listen to, about who you follow, not just in the UFOs and the paranormal and conspiracy world, just in general. Always think about, if someone is discrediting someone else, why? You know, if you look at that other person, look, the problem we've got into in this day and age is we always attack the person. So to use quite a famous person, Katie Hopkins, she's not everybody's cup of tea, and people genuinely don't like her. And that means when she says something they might agree with, they just dismiss it because it's coming out of the mouth of Katie Hopkins. But if it came out of the mouth of somebody else that they liked, they would listen to it and worship it and say, oh, look, he knows everything, he's great, he is. But because it's come out of the mouth of someone they just don't like, they're not willing to listen to it. And this is what we do. Someone will provide evidence, but because we just don't like that person, might be he smells bad, it might be he dismissed something you liked, you just don't like that person. And he might give you the best evidence in the world, and we will dismiss it. And we'll just hang on to that one person. It's like football or rugby, you know, we've picked a team, and we will listen to that person and we will follow that person. It doesn't matter what they say. Yet, if someone else is offering great evidence, no, he's on the other side, he's on the other team, we can't listen to what he's saying. And that's what happens. It happens in this community, in the UFO community. It happens all the time. And it happens here in the ghost community. And for me, it has to change. Any thoughts on that? Yes.
These ghost programs, they are made for entertainment purposes only.
Yes.
So there wouldn't be any kind of serious investigation or anything like that.
You're absolutely right. So I can tell a few stories about it. So I kind of keep an eye on the time. So me and my wife got married in neither of us are religious, so we got married in a little Victorian house in a park, and it's where a lot of people go to have their photos taken, so it was great because we were already there. So while we were walking around this house, I just kind of, you know, looking at it, seeing if we wanted to get married there, I said to the lady, do you do ghost hunts here? Oh, no. We wouldn't dream of doing anything like that here, not in a million years. I said, okay, fine. So we booked the wedding and we got married a few months later. We went on our honeymoon the day after our wedding, 10 days, came back, turned the telly on. I thought, you know what, just for a laugh, I'm going to watch a bit of Most Haunted. So I put Most Haunted on, and where were they? In the house that I got married in. Now you think about a programme that has to be filmed, edited, and all that kind of stuff. So this would have been filmed months and months previous to when I asked that question. So what's the difference? Money. They throw enough money at it. Now, we used to investigate a place regularly. I've got a bit of footage called Drakelow Tunnels, which was a Cold War nuclear bunker. Rover used to store their plane parts down there and everything. 5 miles of tunnels, about 400 feet underground. Really cool place. We used to pay about £300 to investigate there, which was great because it meant that we could keep the costs really low for paying guests, and we could go as often as we wanted. Most Haunted did a night there. And in fact, one of the guys that was on our team, he got to go and kind of show them around, and he's got some stories about people doing things behind the camera. The week after they'd been, and it hadn't been on telly yet, but they'd been and filmed, the week after we tried to book, and it now cost over £800. Simply because the people that kind of owned the place thought, oh, we could get some money out of this. And this is what's happening, and it trickles down from the TV shows down to groups, and we have these national groups now that have essentially monopolised the country. Haunted Happenings is one of the bigger groups. You've probably all heard of them, and they charge £80-90 to go on a ghost hunt that could probably cost you £30, but they're just making a bit of money out of it. Now they need you, as you say, entertainment. They need you to be entertained, because if you're not going to go back, and they're not going to earn their money. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the relevance. It's about the fame, the money. So they need you to go back. So you notice they always have that resident medium with them that makes sure that you have a great night, feel whatever you want to feel. Because that's when you walk away, go, oh, that's fantastic, that was, I got my £90 worth, I'm going to come back, I'm going to tell a few friends, we're all going to go back. If nothing happened, which 9 times out of 10 is the case on the ghost hunt, you're going to walk away thinking, that's a bit shit, I'm not going to bother going back there again. They need you to be entertained. TV shows, you think about a TV show, they're probably there for 10 hours filming, maybe a bit longer. When you watch it on telly, it's a 45-minute programme. So you take out the ad breaks. 45 minutes, you'll have 10 minutes or so of an introduction, you'll have 10 minutes at the end where it's a bit of an outro, so you've got like 20 minutes or so in the middle where it's just the investigation. That's 10 hours investigating condensed into 20 minutes. So of course it's going to seem action-packed because they've condensed 10 hours down into 20 minutes, but come on. You know, you watch the American shows, every house has a demon. I've lived in like 6 houses in my life, never come across a demon. You know, had some bad neighbours, but never a demon.
I was watching Destination Fear because
the name itself.
I watched Destination Fear. I watched the Ghost Brothers and things like that, right? Because this fun and they seem to have a good attitude, and it's a light-hearted show, right? So I don't mind their interactions and stuff. It's quite fun. While you're eating dinner and stuff, it's great. But what I noticed on Destination Fear, which I had never seen before, is they put this thing up on the thing and it said the following clips took place over a 3-hour period, right? They had five minutes worth of little clips, but they previously told you it took them 3 hours to get that footage, right? And the guy said, as he came out of the building, I was sat on my own, nothing happened. And I thought, that would never be shown on any other TV show that I've watched. I literally walked out of the building and said, I was sat on my own and nothing happened.
Where's this programme?
It's on Destination Fear. It's an American show.
What, on what channel?
It's on, I just do Sky, I think it's on Bleeding. Okay. Right? And then I was like, but they've just broken the paradigm.
Yeah.
They've lifted the curtain. Yeah. They've literally shown you, this guy talking at the camera and the camera goes dead. Right? He has no idea that the sound is gone. Right? So he's talking away. Sound's dead on this camera. The vision's still there, sound is dead. They've got a wide angle camera, still showing him speaking. So what they've done is they've cut the sound over his voice so you can hear it, but they've actually said his camera's dead, but you're using a wide angle shot to give you his voice. He said, and then they've gone back to the wide angle, at which point the sound was dead on that camera as well. Right? It just dies, but they can still see it.
Yeah.
And they've got nobody in the crew knows why this has happened. Right? So you literally sat there thinking, again, they've not tried to come up with a reason. They've not tried to say, oh, this is some spooky shit going on and all this kind of stuff. They've literally said, none of us know why this happened, but we're just showing it to you anyway. And I thought, if that's the way paranormal TV is going now, then it's getting better.
Yeah.
Because that's why it should have been, right from the very start, it should have been the same experience that you're watching is what you would be if you were there. If nothing happens, they tell you.
But they were.
Nothing happens.
So I watched Most Haunted from the start. I remember, like 10 years old, sitting next to my dad.
Carl gave me his jacket when he tore it on the thing.
Oh, right. So I remember sitting with my dad Monday night or whatever it was, ready to scare myself, watching Most Haunted. And back in those days, we used to watch it going, oh well, I hope the next one's better. Yeah. And I genuinely believe they all start out with honest intentions.
I said the same thing last night.
But what happens is they have TV producers on their back telling them, people aren't watching, you've got to get people watching. Yeah. And that's what happens, they all start to get more and more outrageous. Yeah. And then you'll have shows come up that are just instantly outrageous. Yeah. And it's all about the money, it's all about the viewings, the people that are watching, getting renewed for a second season. And in fact it says entertainment only. you know, I don't mind people watch. I watch it sometimes, as long as you know it's what it is. You know, you watch wrestling knowing it's fake. You tune into politics knowing it's fake. As long as you know it's fake, you can take it for what it is. It's just a bit of a laugh. But there are people that watch it and genuinely think that that's what ghost hunting is, and it's not. And that was the reason I wrote my first book, because I was just really annoyed of people coming on ghost hunts. We had people walk out after half hour. So, well, this is boring. No one's got possessed yet. I've never seen anyone get possessed like, you know, and because they're watching telly, it's the most haunted effect, as I've called it. This people want this.
I used
Those
to watch.
guys have been possessed, have a stupid attitude towards ghost hunting.
Yeah.
I used to watch they started doing lives, didn't they? Most haunted lives.
Yeah.
Like you said, it starts off, if you start looking at the first lot, it was all quite mundane, little things happening. By the end of it, by the last series, last few they were doing, it was nuts.
Everything.
It's as if everyone was getting possessed.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny
But
about that?
it was, you know, all these things are just make it.
Yeah.
There are so many things off you can't see. that
Oh, yeah.
look as if it's such
Well, this guy that was down Drakelow was watching people throwing rocks from behind the camera. One of them would disappear without telling anyone, just completely vanish, and then there'd be a noise, and then he'd reappear. Happens all the time.
That's the thing though, isn't it? Like you were saying earlier, say for example a ghost hunt. So what you've got happening, say in a 20-minute period of any ghost hunt, you've got multiple things all happening at the same time. You may or may not have something paranormal happening, whatever that means. You've also got the psychology of the people there. So people are freaking each other out, picking up on subconsciously on each other's fear, you know, projecting their own stuff. All of that is happening all at the same time. It's not one or the other, it's everything.
It's everything.
That's why it's so complicated to understand.
Absolutely.
I must admit though, one night, towards the end, I was watching it. I was on my own. Mrs. was sleeping or something like that. The boy was sleeping because he was teething. And I remember watching it. I had, not long before that, a very good friend of mine had died of a brain tumour. After watching it that night, all of a sudden my lights started flickering. The lights were flickering for 4 to 5 days. Power was, you know, it was just going bonkers. We had to get a counsellor in to check the electrics. They said, there's nothing wrong with the electrics.
Just
I said,
flickering.
well, look. And when I said that, the lights didn't flicker.
No.
Nothing was flickering, it was dimming, nothing was happening.
No.
It went off, and it started kicking off again. The 2 nights then, this went off about a week, because I was going to see got up to his funeral then, see? And I said, Nigel, mate, is this you? And the lights were just going bonkers. I'm like, whoa, this is like 1 o'clock in the morning or something silly. And I said, right, can you stop it? Because you're freaking us all out, especially the missus. And it just went bonkers for about 2 minutes and then stopped. We had no problem ever, again, with the electrics flashing, flickering, dimming, going on and off.
There you go.
At all.
Yes.
The best one was when Colin Fry died. Derek Acora tweeted, "Until we meet again, my friend." I thought to myself, he's so good. When you just have a...
Very good, yeah. I always like the psychic night cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. Well, so we're just going to look at a bit of how everyone's an expert now. So this was I'm on multiple like haunting Facebook groups and stuff like that. So this was a picture that got posted on the Facebook page. So this person posted a couple of pictures. So there's this one, and it's followed by this one. A bit weird. So let's look at the first picture. So let's analyse this. So what do we see? So there's a couple dancing. It's obviously a high school prom or something. And you've got a person just off camera here with a bit of a bun, some shorts, you can see the legs, some kind of short cut jeans there, black top, blue trousers. And you've got the disco lights in the background, look, just on the right, purple light. You know these lights, they change colours all the time. So what do we have in the next picture? What can we see now? So there's a green light. Now the light's changed. The person's moved back, there's the shorts, cut off trousers, bun at the top, black hoodie, whatever they were wearing, and as she's moved out of the way, she's got that light exposure. Would you agree?
I don't think that's better.
No. But these were the comments on the Facebook post. Wow, you've definitely caught the Grim Reaper on camera. That's crazy. Does she have a loved one that's passed that may have been there? That looks like a male from the profile. Kind of weird, it's so black. Gives the Grim Reaper vibes. Very scary picture. Something calica. You know what it is, your days are numbered. I laughed so much when I read these. So all we can see is that picture. Now, according to 2 people there, that's the Grim Reaper. They've instantly jumped to, that's the Grim Reaper.
That's social media for you, that is.
It's absolutely, but the problem is this is what you get when you watch these what I'm trying to prove here is when you watch these kind of TV programmes, you know, and you kind of follow this thought process, this is what happens. And everyone's an expert. Everyone knows exactly what that is. Straight away, it's the Grim Reaper. No question about it. So firstly, let's think, is the Grim Reaper an actual thing?
It is to do with indoctrination, because if you look at children in particular, they grow up, they're innocent when they're growing. So they've had no conditioning.
No, and they see everything.
Well, if they can explain that they've seen Grandma in the corner but never ever met Grandma and describe her, then for me, that's evidence.
Absolutely. But it's only when they grow up and we tell them that imaginary friends are stupid and what they're seeing is silly, and they shut that talent off, and therefore...
Because they go to school.
Well, because they grow up in a society where the paranormal isn't normal, and it's frowned upon.
And if you had a child saying, I've got an imaginary friend, that's acceptable. But if an adult says, I saw somebody...
Yeah, you'd be sectioned. Yeah. And you know, you look at cultures like, you know, ancient Indian tribes, or, you know, people that live in the Amazon forest now. In cultures like that, it's culturally accepted that you see ghosts and that you have experiences, and it's part of their life. So they grow up still seeing it because they're not taught that it's stupid and to shut it off.
It's the mind. It's the mind is being conditioned, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's impressionable as well.
Yeah, and for children it is, yeah. And just another bit on kind of groups. So during the brief break between lockdowns, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go and support a local group. So I went to a place called Graiseley Old Hall in Wolverhampton again. I used to live near Wolverhampton, so it's quite close for me. So I paid my 40 quid or whatever it was, went with this group. A friend of mine was going as well, so just turned up. And this house is quite famous. It's been on the BBC. It's known as the House That Cries, because they always find a puddle of water at the bottom of the stairs, and they can't find any reason as to why. No leaks, nothing like that. It's always just a puddle of water. So I went with this group. I'd never been with them before. My friend said, should we just go on it? I said, yeah, fine. So we turned up. I didn't take any equipment. So you talk about, she's there, going out and spending a couple of £100 on ghost equipment. The more I've done this, the less and less equipment I use. My kit bag is just tiny now. And we might go into a little bit of that in a bit. So anyway, so I've turned up, haven't taken anything, no equipment, and most of these groups, they provide equipment anyway. So the night gets going, there's about 30 of us, which is far too many in my opinion for this house. For those that have been on investigations, you don't want that bleed from another group. If they're in a room down the hallway, you don't want that noise. You want to be able to just focus. So for me, the minimal amount possible is always the best. But there are about 30 of us with the team as well. As soon as I walked in, I thought, oh my God. The table was completely set up with all these gadgets, these mobile phones, apps, they'd got a bloody desktop computer set up with these apps that you can get. So off we go, we're split into our groups and we're going round. Now my kind of method is I just like to sit and zone out and tune into the room and like just kind of sit and experience. So I'd got my hood up and I was there just, you know, kind of trying to relax. All of a sudden, the door gets booted open and this guy walks in with a torch. Well, it's a phone, his phone. He's live feeding on Facebook. And he's walking and he goes, this is the living room, guys. And he's like right in my face. And I'm like, bloody hell, mate. This is the living room. As you can see, we've got people here investigating. And I said, mate, what are you doing? And he said, oh, just for the followers. I said, we're trying to investigate here. Like, do you mind? Oh no, I've got people watching this. And then off he goes round the room into the next room and interrupts the next group. And I'm just sat there thinking, what the hell is going on? I paid like 30-40 quid for this, but it's okay because the 15 followers at home that are watching his video, they get it for free. There was no kind of respect for what we were trying to do. And I was like, is this where it's going? Is this where ghost investigating is going? Because this is really, really bad. Then I got put with a group of people that had these mobile phone apps. You probably had them, you've seen them. There's one called Ghost Radar that kind of tells you there's a ghost over there, it's over there. There's one that shouts words at you and says random words, and apparently that's the ghost using the phone to communicate with you. And this was fascinating because we talk about psychology in this. So you think about, I sat at a table, there were 4 women there, and they'd got this mobile phone. So firstly, we were in a dark room and they're blinding themselves staring at this bright light, you know? And then they wonder why they can see shadows and ghosts in the corner because they've just been staring at a bright light. And they've got this thing shouting words at them. And over a 10-minute period, they developed their own story. So this phone shouted, "Girl, girl, there's a girl, there's a girl. Where's the girl? There's a girl in here, it's just said there's a girl." And then, "Where are you? Where are you?" And then it says, "Fire." "She died in a fire. She burned to death. This girl burned to death. But where are you?" "Over there." "Over where?" I think she went over there. "She's over there in the corner." So after 10 minutes, we developed this whole story of a 4-year-old whatever girl who burnt in a fire. She was standing over there in the corner, and she was there trying to communicate with us through this iPhone app. And that was it. They left the room absolute believing that they'd just encountered a 4-year-old girl that had burned to death. A quick Google during the break showed that there'd never been a fire recorded in that place ever. No death, no children's death, no deaths. I didn't say anything to them though, I just kind of did a bit of research after. We went upstairs to one of the bedrooms, and they've got the app on again. "Girl, there's a girl here again, is it the same girl? I wonder if it's the same girl." And I'm thinking, no, maybe it's the app just giving you the same word again because it's only got so many words pre-programmed into the app. "There's a girl, what's she doing? Is it the same girl? She's followed us." And we left that room firmly believing that that girl had followed us from downstairs and she was now following us around the house. She must not have any family, she must really want to be near us because she doesn't have anyone to talk to. And they left the night firmly believing that that's what it was. And I just think, really? That's ghost hunting then? You download a free 99 app and it can tell you ghosts.
Modern-day ghost hunting.
Modern-day ghost hunting, and I tell you, that was the last organised ghost hunt I've been on.
You've put me up.
Yeah. I tend to do more private ones now, like the documentary that I've made and stuff. I can't do it anymore. So which brings me on to this. So the future of paranormal evidence. Can we ever trust what we see again? Can we? You know, the more we develop our technology, the more we develop things that can capture evidence. We're always one step behind things like CGI, Photoshop and things like that. And the problem is, there's always a skeptic. And there's always someone that will say to you, "You've got the best evidence ever," and you know it. You think that is it. And someone will say, "That's fake. Photoshop that, didn't you?" And you're like, no, I actually genuinely could. No, you Photoshop that. And you just can't change their mind. So what's the point? This is the question now I'm genuinely asking myself, what is the point? What is the point in showing evidence to someone that doesn't believe what you're never going to change their mind?
It's cognitive dissonance.
It is. And equally, what's the point in showing it to someone that already believes? Because they already believe. You don't need to convince them, they already agree with what you're saying. So what's the point? So the more I've done this, the smaller my kit bag has got. The best tool you can use on a ghost hunt is yourself, because it can't be manipulated by outside sources like a K2 meter or a spirit box. You can trust yourself. If you want to convince yourself that you've seen something that you haven't, that's fine. You go to bed thinking that, but you genuinely know what you've seen and what you haven't seen. So the best tool you can use is yourself. And the more I've done it, the more I've come to realise that actually this is personal. It's a personal experience. Every experience that you have, be it a UFO, a ghost, whatever, it's personal. And you don't need to convince people around you that it's happened. As long as you know that it's happened, and it will mean something to you. People have UFO experiences and it triggers synchronicity. It happens at a real important moment in their life. Like you say, something happened to you and you had that really pivotal moment, and it's personal to you. And someone might say to you, "That's a load of bollocks. Didn't happen.
People can ask questions though, do they? And they don't question themselves. And that's really what should happen, is you should question everything.
You absolutely question everything, yeah. But you know, you've had an experience and you know that happened. But you convince someone and they'll go, nah, don't believe you. And then that makes you get worn out. You get kind of worn out trying to convince people, actually, it's real, to the point where you just don't care anymore. And it's not that I don't care, but I'm at the point now where we don't need to convince people. You're either trying to convince people that you never will, so you're wasting your time, or you're talking to people that already believe. You know? So for me, it's a personal experience, and that's the route I'm going down.
Approval is necessary.
It's not necessary.
Nice, but it's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
People learn from their own experience. From my own personal perception, if I keep things that I've experienced and still experiencing very close to myself, I've learned the hard way from when I was a teenager, trying to say things to different people or come out and, you know, literally people think I'm crazy. This has been from when I've been very young in school to predicting things right up till now. Because I've learned people learn from experience. They have to experience it themselves to believe these things.
That's right.
Whatever it is.
But as I say, I got a guy that caught that really good picture of 3 children and still doesn't believe.
Yeah.
You know, how long have I got then?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, great. So I'll show you some evidence now then of things that I've caught. So this, I think I showed this at the last time I was here, so apologies to those that may have seen this. So this is us in Drakelow Tunnels, and we're having a dance. And during this night we decided to play a bit of Vera Lynn, because the people that would have been working down there, this would have been their kind of music. And we were in the canteen area at the time, so there's a big kitchen at the back, and this is where all the tables would have been set out. We did a spirit board, we'd got Vera Lynn on, you know the Vera Lynn track. It had been on now about 8 times. I was getting pretty fed up of it, and I said, right, I'm turning this crap off. And the glass shot to no. I was like, okay, I'll leave it on then. So we decided to do some dancing, see if some people would dance with us. So apologies, you've got to watch me dance. I am used to like Northern Soul and Ska, not necessarily used to dancing to Vera Lynn. But we capture a really interesting orb, I guess you could call it. It comes round my back and it's bright red, so you won't miss it. That's breath, people breathing behind the camera. You'll see dust coming up because we're in a tunnel, like there then. But this one acts completely independently. And that's interesting, so it's red and it's acting independently. So I'll just play that again.
Not affected by the movements of the people either.
No, but it has its own movement. And what's interesting is if you actually look at it closely, it's 2 orbs intertwined, dancing around each other as they come round my back.
So somebody's getting jiggy with you.
Yeah, so someone wanted to tango with me. So these are kind of just dust going up there. And you get this one. And you hear the lady say, what's that? So she's kind of seen that as well. She's seen that with her eyes.
It looks totally different to the dust.
Yeah, it's completely different. It's a really interesting piece of footage. So this next clip was caught at the house that I investigated in Essex. Do go and watch the documentary. It's on YouTube. It's like 46 minutes long. A haunting in Essex. This is what I've done here is I'm not going to tell you what this says because I hate that. You watch a programme. I did this to my wife. I did a test. She went to make a cup of tea and it was on the programme, and it came up telling you what this EVP was that they caught. So she came back in and I've kind of covered it with my arm and said, what's this saying? And she said something and I was like, okay. Removed my arm and it was nothing to what the subtitles were saying. And she went, oh yeah, I can hear that now, yeah. But what her original thought was completely different, and that's that kind of planting it in your mind, what you should be hearing. So just have a listen to this, and then I want some people's thoughts as to what's being said. Can you hear that? That's not coming through the amp anymore, is it? Is the amp on?
Yeah. I don't know.
No, it's not coming through.
Come through the laptop.
Yeah, it's coming on my laptop, yeah.
Yeah, it's not coming through there.
No. Oh. Right. have a listen to this and see what you think. Can anyone hear? What's up? Yeah. Nobody hear it now?
I thought it, I don't know.
Play it again.
Sit down, make up what it's saying.
Okay.
I'm outside, I'm coming.
Okay. So I hear, get out of my house. Now listen.
Everybody's going to hear something different.
Exactly. Listen. Get out of my house with a bit of a laugh. Sounds like someone smokes about 50 a day. So we caught this on a motion sensor camera. So in the house we set up motion sensor cameras because a lot was happening in rooms when people weren't there, and a lot was happening. They would come back and see things that had happened. So we wanted to capture stuff when they weren't there. So we set up motion sensor cameras. The reason they were motion sensor is because I just couldn't be bothered to go through hours and hours of footage. I only wanted to look at stuff that had been triggered, and that was one of the things that came through. So just once more. But it's that perception again. People hear what they want to hear. People hear different things.
I found that quite a lot on, again, back on No Sorted.
Yeah.
They would play things and they, what the hell was that? And then they'd say something, they'd, hang on.
Yeah, and then you
And then you hear it, what they say.
then you hear what they say, precisely, yeah. Oh. So this is Lee, he's the father of the family. So did we hear a bit of a guttural growl? So there's a dog, and sorry about his belly. So there's a dog there, so you think, well, the dog just growled, didn't he? But he then asks the dog, you just heard that as well, didn't you? Now this thing has it in for Lee. If you watch the documentary, you'll see. So he goes out to let the dog in. So really interesting kind of growl that he's just kind of heard behind him as he's walked into the house. So this was me in Truth Juice in Bristol. Whoever I was talking to earlier, this is that place where I got like a tenner or whatever it was. So during this talk, there were only 5 people there. I've come a long way. And so during the talk, I heard someone shout my name. And I stopped the talk thinking, yes, and then no one responds, so I carry on. Interestingly, the guy then emailed me the recording a couple of weeks later and said, what do you make of this? And I think he picked it up. Thank you. Thought someone called my name. Did you hear the Kieran? So I heard, and I'm wearing one of those kind of mics so he can pick me up because he's filming from the back of the room. And I think that's what picked it up. Thank you. So for that to get captured on camera was brilliant, and I kind of stopped instantly. So when he sent me that, I was absolutely over the moon. Just a couple of more things to go through. So one thing they have in this house a lot are pennies being thrown a lot, and we decided to put these pennies in a jar and collect all the pennies that were in the house. They were getting New Zealand 10p's, everything thrown at them. We were only in the house for about 30 seconds and we had one thrown at us. And
20s would have been nice.
well, I asked for 5s, but clearly not, Brexit Britain. And so we were collecting all these pennies in the jar, and every time one was thrown, I was making them count the pennies. Has the penny come out of the jar? And they weren't. They were manifesting. The pennies were just getting more and more. So where the hell were these pennies coming from? So this is just after we got in there. So we're kind of in this kitchen living room area there. Elise, she sat on the stairs, and a penny this is the hive of activity in the house, this stairs, gets thrown off the wall, over her head, and rolls into the room. And then Lee walks out thinking, what the hell was that? But she literally pelted into the room. That was the second penny we'd had thrown. We'd been there for about 5 minutes at the time. And then this is another good example. So during, just a bit of background on this, the 2 children, 2 autistic twins, they're scared. You know, there's a photo I'll show you in a second where they've got scratches all over their back and things like that. They're petrified. And a penny's just been thrown, and he's picking it up there. And the child downstairs says, "Did you just throw that penny?" And Lee says, yeah, it was me. Because he's trying to protect them from what's actually going on. And then another penny gets thrown, and you see this one.
Hey? What's that, mate? Yeah, it's me, sorry. Oh no, sorry. What about this?
So keep your eye on this little bit here.
You touch that fucking one. Fucking start that shit now, we're going.
And there it is, appears on the floor. So he turns the mirror around, he says, "You can face the other way and don't start that shit now because we're going out." And then as he gets to the top of the stairs, I don't know how it must go over his head, hit the door and land on the floor there.
Has he been playing with Ouija boards?
No, if you watch the documentary, Elise did. She didn't play for Ouija board though.
Because you are opening portals for something that you don't understand and don't know.
She did, it wasn't a Ouija board, but she did something.
Did they get it sorted? Sorry.
No, it's still going. I went down there 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's all kicked off again since the dad died, and not him, another dad.
And you haven't been able to get anybody to go and help them?
We've had a couple of people go in. Daniela, who Bruce's wife, who we spoke about, she's the one that introduced me to this family, and I tried to get a priest to go around, and the priest would only go if they went to church for 6 weeks. That's religious blackmail.
I'm really interested in things like this, and this is something that I want to do in the future.
Yeah, well, let me know and I'll take you down.
Amazing.
So these are the scratches that were caught on one of the backs. I think this was Khan. So at the time he was like 18, 19. So he was in having a bath, felt his back kind of getting a bit sore, and that's what he had all over his back. So this will end on this one. So this is probably the best piece of evidence that I've ever captured.
Has anybody independent been there while that's happening?
So these are motion sensors. So I've been there and seen coins thrown at me. I've had a shoe thrown at me in a room that I was in on my own. I then left the room, someone else went in and they had the same shoe thrown at them as well. I've experienced a lot of stuff while I've been there. So this is about 2 o'clock in the morning, and at this point that they'd been sleeping in the living room downstairs for about 3 months because they were all too scared to go upstairs. And it's not the tidiest of houses, let's just put it that way, but there's a pile of washing on the floor. So one of the kids downstairs, their onesie and slippers were downstairs, they got changed and they'd gone to bed. Now what you're going to watch now is the onesie manifest out of the ceiling on the upstairs landing and land on the floor. It's really quick. I'll crouch so you can all see. And 2 little orbs fly out of the pile. So here, this camera is set up on the hallway, right at the back of the hallway. So you come up the stairs there, there's bedroom, bathroom, and this camera, there's nothing behind it, it's attached to a solid wall. And we've tried everything. I've tried to squeeze behind the camera, not the slimmest, but I've tried to squeeze behind the camera, it knows you're there. Because it's a motion sensor, when you walk up to the camera, it starts filming. So it would capture you walking up, but it only kicks in there. And above there is just a roof. And if you watch the documentary, it shows you the house, so you'll get a better picture of this hallway. But these clothes were downstairs. Manifest themselves and land on the hallway like that. Fascinating. Yeah, well, the Enfield haunting, something happened similar. 2 policemen watched a slipper get thrown in the bedroom, didn't see it land on the floor, and a policeman downstairs saw it come through the ceiling and land on the floor. So how are these things dematerialising and rematerialising? Fascinating stuff. But that's it. I know I probably ran over a little bit there, but if anyone wants to come and talk to me about anything, please do. And I really appreciate you guys coming tonight. Thank you.